on the from where it says you are live. So here we are. What's up? I am Jeff, the SP Spaz, and this is the Masked Marauder.
It'd probably be better if I didn't have this mask on, huh?
Yeah.
I'm Justin. I'm the ESTP. I haven't done a whole lot of YouTube, but like Jeff has. But I'm kind of starting out doing a lot more shows and things. So we thought it'd be fun to answer these questions from Typecast Heroes, I think it is. Oh, cool!
Sure.
The notification for the show just came up on my phone. The notification for the show just came up on my phone and hit our faces.
Okay.
That's cool.
Cool. Well, we know that's working.
Yeah. Totally.
It's funny because the other day I did I was recording a video that was not planned to be like, I mean, it was a live stream, but it was an unlisted thing that I was planning to just, post later and, possibly edit or whatever, but put up on my channel. But I saw that there was actually a viewer. So apparently, even though it was unlisted, somebody somehow got the message that I was broadcasting, so they were watching. I don't know who it was because they didn't.
Oh, yeah, you have to do it actually private, or else if they're, I'm not sure how it works if it's unlisted. If maybe they're searching, I don't know.
I don't know.
Like
somehow, yeah, somehow it showed that I was on because they were able to view it. So anyway, so I figure these so-called basic questions are probably the same for both. So I'll just go through them really quickly, and then we'll get to the so-called in-depth ones, and then we can, I guess, just go alternate through the way. So the number one says, how old were you when you took the MBTI? So the first personality test I took was actually the Kersey temperament disorder and the original Please Understand Me. And when I took that, I was only 20. But when I took the actual MBTI, I was at least in my 30s. I don't think I was quite 40 yet, but I was probably like late 30s. So how old are you now? I'm 43 now. And why did you take the MBTI? Like I said, I'm kind of assuming this is just sort of asking in general about personality stuff. Back when I took the Kersey disorder, it was basically because my mother had bought the book Please Understand Me, and she had me and both of my brothers take it because she was curious about what we would end up with from the book. As far as the official MBTI, I just decided after a while that I figured I'd go ahead and do it since I had done like online knockoffs along the way, and even though it cost money, I was like, well, I'll fork over the bucks and do the super official version to see what it actually says. And I kind of wanted to, to confirm what I already thought, because for a while I had identified myself as ISFP, and so. But I had it was the introverts that had basically convinced me I was an extrovert. But I wanted to see what the actual official test would say. And sure enough, I showed up as an extrovert even on that. So I figured it must be right. And the next question on here says, how certain are you of the result? I would say pretty certain. Nothing can be like 100%. But as much as I know myself and am aware of what words mean, I think I'm pretty sure at this point. And of course, I still get people all the time in online circles that, both people that watch my videos and people that have read things I've typed in text that tell me I'm not the ESFP, I'm some other type. And every once in a while, they even give me reasons why they think I'm whatever other type. And even smaller amount of the time, bits of what they say make any sense whatsoever. And so I actually do appreciate it when someone makes a case and explains what, if it's just loaded with, well, I can clearly see from the way your eyebrows twitch every third second that you are extroverting dissociative NE. And this therefore means, okay, if it's just that stuff, I'm like, okay, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. But every once in a while, somebody could be like, a little bit more using actual facts to talk about what they're talking about.
Jeff, you have that far away look in your eyes. Yeah, I got like 2 hours of sleep last night. What do you want?
Yeah. Well, yeah, never mind. I still keep meaning to do it. I never gotten around to doing it, even though it's like a really short thing. But I said I was going to do like a video that was like 90 seconds or something that was like debunking visual typing in 90 seconds. Right. Because one of the people that tried to do that. Oh, I can tell your type by which way your eyes move. They said that on my videos that I kept looking that way. And every time I do that, that was me using NI.
Oh my God.
Okay. No, that's called I'm sitting on a couch in my living room. The couch is against this wall over here. Everything else in the room takes place on this side. Therefore, if anything makes a sound or a visual thing over on that side, I'm going to look that direction. No, that must mean I'm going to that part of my brain. No, maybe there's a simpler explanation. Anyway, and then the number 5 basically thing says, which country do you currently reside in? And that would be the United States of America.
The greatest country on earth.
The home of the free, kind of, and the land of the brave sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway, Justin, I guess I'll turn over to you to answer those same 5 questions, if you would.
Yeah. I'm going to seeing the actual screen while I'm doing this, but there's a oh wait, oops, sorry, I was going the wrong questions. Okay, how old were you when you took the MBTI? And I don't think she added in the part about why you took it, but I'll just give the whole explanation. I went to alternative school, which is awesome because okay, so here's a typical SP type of thing: ESTP, whatever, ISTP, ESFP, all of them. We tend to be, we can be pretty smart, but we just don't like to do the work. And I made like super good grades up through. Are you like playing with the camera thing?
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, what is going on?
I was trying to find the one that would actually just switch to showing just you for the moment. So it took me a while to find it. Nice. All right, go ahead.
All right. So I made really good grades, except to a certain point where I just stopped caring. And so it tells a little bit more about me. I took economics twice in just regular high school, and it was so stupid because they had us take headlines, which this is kind of relevant, the fact you had to take headlines that were relevant to economic concepts, but it just got so pointless to me. Like, you had to have it such a way on this construction paper and staple them all together in this neat little booklet, and I was like, this is so stupid, I'm not doing this. So I went to alternative school, and I actually just did the book work, and I got an A. I had to, just because of that one class, I had to take alternative school. So there was also this class called Marketing Yourself, and everybody had to take it. It wasn't just by choice. It's not just because I'm an ESTP or I'm marketing myself. But I was actually more quiet back then, to tell the truth. But anyway, I took an MBTI test or whatever you want to call it on the computer, and it was like this ancient program too. It was so weird. It was like, it looked like a computer program out of the 80s or something. It was like, why are we doing this? But anyway, I took this test on this ancient program, and it spit out some letters, and I was like, what is this all about? So I asked my teacher, and I'm pretty sure she was an idealist, because she was one of those teachers who was all about your unique self and just kind of accommodating to you as a person and everything. And so I was like, yeah, what is this all about? She just kind of set me down and went through the whole explanation. But this is going to sound weird that I'm an ESTP, and I'm very sure of my type. But at the time, and it has a lot to do with the fact I was raised in the bubble, and I was kind of moody and whatnot as a teenager. I was like, I think I was 18 at the time, but I got an INFP, and then I think I might have taken it again, got an INTP, because I variated on all the letters except for P. Like, I was always 100% P. And Jeff, I know you probably want to tell that joke. You should tell that joke if you want, but now that I mentioned it. But yeah, I varied on like E and I and N and S and F and T and all that. But I was like, some of it, I just kind of like, it's kind of like that horoscope phenomenon where it's like, yeah, that's totally me, And I didn't really look at a whole lot of different descriptions, but eventually when I read the ESTP one, I was like, that's the best personality. Like, that's how I want to be, So when I moved out, I eventually ended up kind of basically fulfilling my authentic personality, or what do you want to call it. But yeah, that's the type I got at first, and it's like almost the opposite. But what was the next question here? I pretty much answered that one. How old are you now?
Yeah,
I'm 36 now. Oh yeah. Okay, she did say, ask why did you take it? That was the third question. So I live in the USA too, so I'll just go ahead and answer that now. But as far as how certain I am of the results, so after I moved out and I just kind of did my own thing, and I ended up taking the test a few years later, I got ESTP, and I've gotten that ever since. And it's not just because I got the results, but I've actually like analyzed I looked at my whole life pattern and everything, and the way I process the world and all that, and what my values are, and it always like comes up that way, and it makes total sense to me. And I'll get more into that later when we address the other questions. But also, if it helps any, I've talked to David Kersey Jr. and he believes I'm that type too, and other people that know me really well as well. So I have kind of an objective feedback too on that.
I'm sorry, I don't remember asking you what's your life story, but
I tend to do that. I tend to ramble a lot.
Number 6, do you think IPs enjoy urinating more than EJs? Because you would think so.
Do you think TPs like to TP other people's houses?
See, you talked about a joke. I knew what you were probably thinking about. I decided to tell a different joke that was less predictable. Anyway, so now we'll get to these so-called in-depth questions, and we'll see how far we get with this, because like you said, both of us tend to ramble, so we don't want to have this take hours. But anyway, they're a little oddly worded, and I say that with love, but I'm going to try to answer what I think they're asking, and if I'm wrong, then just chalk it up to my personality or something.
Totally.
Okay, so number 1 says there's a stereotype regarding ESFPs that because they lead with their sensory output, they are primarily interested in fun things and living in the moment. How do you see this argument? Okay, so first of all, that's not actually an argument. So that is your first grammar lesson. Secondly, I think she probably meant sensory input rather than output. But anyway, primarily interested in fun things. Yes, I am. As far as living in the moment, I wouldn't say that's something I'm interested in. It's just something that I do, that I've always done, and it's all I know, like how to live. It's just come naturally to me. So I've always been confused when people made a distinction. Well, I guess I was originally confused when I read things about that, because honestly, like I don't really understand the alternative, and I'm not a drug user, or somebody that gets inebriated on a regular basis to like experience some sort of detachment from my living in the reality of the moment kind of thing. So, I mean, I do get tired. That's probably the closest that I get to that, is when I'm so tired that I'm starting to like sort of lose focus on the physical world around me. And that's an interesting side thing that we won't talk about in this, because it'll take too long. But I've had this sort of theory that the sort of shadow self or whatever comes out when someone's really tired. And when I've talked to like sensing preference people, they generally have agreed with me in terms of the more tired they get, the more like they lose track of their physical environment. Whereas intuitive types have the opposite effect, where they've actually told me that their brain that normally is jumping from subject to subject or thinking about all this stuff that's, they have to sort of remind themselves to focus on reality, that when they're really tired, the opposite happens, that they're like hyper focused on reality and can't do the usual, like, thinking about stuff that they do. So anyway, I just thought that was an interesting side note.
Yeah, that is.
But anyway, as far as generally with ESFPs, I think that's a stereotype as far as being interested in fun things. That's true. It's kind of funny to me, again, that there would be types of people who aren't interested in fun things, but apparently they exist. Justin mentioned David Kersey. I can't remember whether it was in Please Understand Me 2 or Brains and Careers. I think it was in Please Understand Me Too, though, where he actually put the word fun in quotation marks. I was like, that's a very NT thing to do, to talk about fun as if it's this fun, this like, I've heard about this fun. Tell me about this. It reminds me of that 2020 interview with Charlie Sheen that was famous for a while, that everybody played clips from, with that blonde interviewer where she goes, "You like to party." She says it this way like she's never heard of it. I've heard of this concept of partying. What's that like?
People amaze me. I think we're like the simplest type, like, because all the other types, even the SJs, it's like they have to. I mean, so SJs sometimes they like to clean and stuff like that and do their duty, but mostly it's just like, I have to do this, and that's why their preference is there. And so it's like so obvious that having fun is fun, having partying is fun. Yeah. It's like,
and I think that's part of the self-awareness, or like the point where we reach, like, I guess maybe the maturity of artisans after a while, is sort of acknowledging that, as opposed to sort of fighting it and having this idea that, because if you look at the type groups online where you see young SP types, that they kind of have this aversion to admitting that they don't want to, they get insulted if somebody says that we're a simple type or whatever, because they see that as like, oh, I'm not like as deep as some other whatever, it's something that comes off as sort of offensive, but it's like over time you kind of realize like that's really not a bad thing. It doesn't mean you're any less of a person or have less to contribute to the world or anything like that. So so anyway, I guess I don't know, your number one in-depth question that you have and how it differs from what I said. So
oh man, I forgot. I was going to ask you a question about the first time you actually took the Kersey disorder. I remember. I want to actually touch on this real quick, because I heard a video stream you did. I was just listening to it today with Men and Dave Kersey Jr. And you were talking about how the first time you took it, your mom actually like tried to get you to do it, and she told you what type she thought you were, and you kind of twisted or you conformed the answers so that it would be something different than what she thought.
Yeah, she didn't actually tell me. She did not actually tell me what type she thought I was. She just told me there was a type she thought I was. So I had to do two things. One, I had to guess what she probably thought I was, and then two, try to rig the answer so I wouldn't be the type she thought I was. That was my entire goal when it came to taking that. I didn't care what the actual result was. I just wanted to defy her guess on whatever it was.
What did you get?
The funny thing about that is that she thought I was an INFP. So I laughed when you said that that's what you originally got, because in my effort to be less like myself in my answers, when I got the result, it was INXP. So the T and F were actually even, but it was really close to what she was projecting for me. Wow. So it was pretty funny if you think about it, that in my attempts to be like, I'm going to answer in some other way that isn't true about myself, I ended up close to what she was thinking about me. So yeah, I ended up thwarting myself in my attempt to thwart her. So that's like, I don't know, karma. Or,
there's something about the fact that there's a slant toward N's being more creative, and I know you've touched on that too. And it's like they use the letters as sort of this kind of just a boilerplate thing where all S's are like they just go standard by the book or whatever like that. And it's like, no, it's like SPs look for the variety and different ways to do things, and you can't square that just kind of boilerplate way of talking about sensors with basically any description of SPs you can come up with that that you really run across online. You can't twist the description of SP enough to make it make sense with that. And so people will be like, yeah, I'm totally an N because I'm creative and out of the box and all that. Yeah. And so that's part of, I think, why I got in. at first. Now,
Yeah,
I
and
was
I
a little
think that
bit
happens to a lot of. Really, it can even happen to SJs. I mean, especially the
Mm,
younger they are, because even
right.
SJs will, even they'll gravitate towards trying to belong to certain groups and fit into certain things. If
Yeah.
you ask a, like an SJ teenager, are you like innovative and creative, or are you, boring and predictable? I mean, most of them are going to, oh yeah, I'm creative. What are they going to
Yeah.
say? I mean, it depends on what
And
words you use, but because I have
they
had
could be
SJs
pretty.
tell me that they actually do like being called normal,
Yeah.
which is funny to me because that's like, I recoil in horror at being called normal. Um,
Yeah.
but and so that's another failure of with the S versus N thing, because I've seen those kind of goofy online versions of things where they'll do like the types as some sort of like flow chart where you answer yes or no to thing, and like the first question that they try to divide S's versus N's is, it says, "Are you weird? Yes or no?"
Oh my.
And if you say no, it types you as an S, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
mean,
What?
when you ask, "Are you weird?" Like, I would expect probably upwards of 60-70% of people are going to say they're weird, and there's not
Yeah.
that
Right.
many N's.
It's like,
So
no. Yeah. Exactly. Hey. Oh, dang it! I just missed what I was gonna say. Crap.
I'm
Well, anyway,
sure
I'll move
it was riveting, whatever it was.
on.
But
That's the weird thing about my mind is like I can be thinking of something so compelling in one moment, and then the next moment I completely forget it, and I'm like,
well,
oh,
then this seems like a perfect time for you to answer question number two, even though I'm not sure you ever answered question one because I didn't hear you read it. But question number two says, "What does the inside of your mind look like? If I could walk around inside it and see your mind work, what would I see?" Now, notice it says mind, not brain. So, my first instinct, of course, when I saw that was to think of the brain and think, well, it's going to be awfully squishy and kind of gross.
dancing.
But then, like,
Yeah,
no, no, mind. Mind is this psychological concept of this, thing that exists within the brain, I guess, or something.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
it seems tied to what you were talking about. So,
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'll go ahead and answer that because basically the way I answered it, because I wrote out some answers, and not all these are gonna be kind of the same as what I wrote out, but um, what I said to that is basically everything that I'm sensing or perceiving is a part of my mind because literally the sensations you're having are in your brain. So it's like that's a part of my mind. So to me, for the most part, this my environment are my thoughts. That for the most part. I mean, I have like kind of background thought processes, and sometimes like last night I randomly woke up in the middle of the night and I just kind of was thinking for a while, but it was like my thoughts were keeping me awake. I just think I'd had too much adrenaline or something. I don't know what it was, but it's not enough for me to capture my attention away from the sensory. And so, really, I mean, the inside of my mind, I had to really, in fact, I think this is part of why I didn't really fully know myself or wasn't sure of my personality type for a while, is because it's kind of hard, like, especially an extroverted sensor. And it's like, well, I don't know. Like that's something an introverted, intuitive person would know. Like someone who's kind of really introspective, and like INTJ, INFJs are probably the most intense in that way. But I have done some kind of thinking about it, and it sort of makes sense. Like and I have to like really look at my life, and my memories and everything, and kind of think about the way I've acted. It's like, okay, it kind of makes sense that like compared to other people who are definitely introspective and abstract, I am nothing like, because like there's a certain point where if they're talking about something conceptual that is tied to on the ground or real experience or whatever, I can follow them. But when they build on that abstraction to another layer of abstraction, they totally lose me. And I'm like, I think sometimes I pretended like I knew what they were talking about, but I didn't totally. And then I would like say something screwy, and they'd be like, "What?" And so I never really fully. I don't think I fully ever integrated into that. So yeah, it's like one of those tricky questions for types like us to answer.
Yeah, I
Like,
remember trying to explain that concept to an INFJ once, that,
mhm,
the overwhelming majority of people don't think about these things for most of
mhm,
their life. And that kind of
mhm.
blew her mind, because it was like, she'd been
Yeah.
like, that's a thing that I've done all my life. And I'm like, yeah, when I started talking about how I was in my 30s before I could really like examine my own behavior, or even really occurred to me to do that. Like, it didn't mean I
Mhm,
never thought about stuff that I did before, or like, oh,
mhm,
I did this thing that was stupid. Why did I do that? Or could I have done this a better way? Like, those kind of
mhm,
things would pop into my head, usually in a negative way, like about things that I thought I had screwed up, and like, why, how could I have messed that up so much? I also want to take this opportunity, since we were talking about, our senses and all that, to point out that the irony of this is that Justin lives in the Pacific Northwest, and I can see like the sun in the background here, whereas I live in Texas. So the stereotype is it'll be raining where he is, and it'll be like some dry desert where I am. Well, I don't know if you can hear it, but we got a bunch of rain going in the background here, whereas I see the bright sunshine where he is. So I felt like the
That's
need to point
awesome.
out that
I love
interesting
that. I love
fact.
messing with people's stereotypes like that. It's
Yeah.
amazing. And actually, it doesn't rain as much as people often stereotype it as. It's cloudy a lot, but it depends on the year. But when it all that when it does rain, it's kind of a drizzle, but all that pays off because when the sun's shining, it looks amazing. But it's called the Emerald City for a reason. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
I'll
why I
bet.
said, like, I love looking at the trees and the flowers and everything. It's like, ooh, I mean, there's trees everywhere, and it's like
And
just
conversely, or concurrently, something like that, some C word. Um, Texas is not some vast wasteland with tumbleweeds going by that
yeah.
looks like some old West
I
town
used I used
that
to live there.
some people seem to think. Of course,
Yeah,
I don't know. In the people watch Dallas, they got the stereotype that everybody was like rich oil businessmen, but actually, at least in Dallas, they showed there was buildings and stuff, and a city. It wasn't just all some like. I'm sure that at the time was mind blowing to some people. The people that were
yeah.
like, "Wait a minute, I thought Texas was like the old West. Like, how are there skyscrapers? I don't understand."
By the way, Austin's a pretty tight city. It's like a party city. It's kind of got a cool vibe and a lot of culture there.
Yeah, it's overrated. But anyway, um, the biggest problem with Austin is the traffic is so bad because they
Hmm.
don't have room for the population boom that happened there. So the
Right.
people that already lived in Austin when that happened, like my brother, for instance, are like they want to kick out all the new people because they made things so bad when it came to the traffic. Because like people complain about like Houston or Dallas traffic because they're bigger cities than Austin, but that's the
Mhm.
point. They're bigger. They have more room for the
Yeah.
people, so it's more spread out. It's not Austin. It's like they can have a traffic jam 24 hours a day. You can pull into Austin at 2 a.m. and you're stuck somewhere just because that happens to be when
Mm.
people are there. It's
Well, I know a lot of
obnoxious.
California progressives moved there since I've been there, so for probably multiple reasons, probably not as great as it was
Well, yeah, a lot
before.
of
But
people have figured out, that amazingly you can't tax your way to prosperity. But anyway,
yeah,
um,
we digress.
question number 3 on my list anyway says, "What is your take on formal education? How well did you personally perform in school?" So this again is something I could do an entire video on and have. So if you
Mhm.
look at my channel, there's a video I did where I talked about answering questions from Victor Golinko, and one of them was about like school and education stuff. So I already talked about that. I also did a video about teaching type in school. So I've covered this subject quite a bit. So I'm not going to go on a long time about it. But my take on formal education on a really brief basis is that there's nothing wrong with education, but in general, I'm opposed to compulsory education
Mhm.
it being something where you hold parents hostage with like, oh, you must put your kid in this school or else you're going to go to jail. I mean, I think that's kind of a
Yeah,
ridiculous concept. If you think about
totally.
how the sort of backwards direction we've come from, a point where people were like, trying to build libraries and build schoolhouses so that kids had an opportunity to read books and things. It was presented as something that was like a privilege and an opportunity to be
Mhm.
able to have access to these things. to then we're like basically holding a gun to someone's head and saying, you must go to school, or, and why? Because supposedly we're supposed to like be competing with other countries education wise, and somehow, and it doesn't matter how much we do this, they still pull out these charts and graphs and things and say that we're lagging behind Japan and Sweden and everywhere else. So it doesn't seem to have done any good anyway, like having this more micromanaging from afar on exactly how kids are supposed to be taught, and they're all supposed to take these same standardized tests and all. It's like conforming to all these things, and to what end? Are we really learning more because of that? I would say probably if we've increased in knowledge in the last 20, 30 years, it's more been outside of formal education that people have found ways to educate themselves other than that. And even the traditional classrooms have had to incorporate those things from outside just to keep up with what's happening in the world of education. So it's kind of a little bit of an irony to that too. But how would I personally perform in school? I performed great. Unlike Justin, my grades were not very good, but I had lots of great performances. And you may have seen me in such shows as The Man Who Came to Dinner and Tom Jones. And we did one that was like a bunch of Saturday Night Live skits. That was fun. And I wrote and directed my own play senior year that was called Ring, Ring, Ring. So that was a lot of fun too. I also took opportunities to do things such as when I had a computer class my senior year, I figured out that I could actually send messages across the network to all the other computers in the room.
That was awesome.
So I would do things like, when the teacher was up front trying to like teach some lesson about something we were supposed to be learning how to do on computers, I would send a message to everybody that said, if you're bored, clap your hands. And, about half the class would do it because, the other half was either they didn't care, they weren't paying attention, or they were just too cool to do what, I had said to do. So, the computer teacher was suddenly puzzled why half the class suddenly started applauding for no apparent reason. So
that was good times. I mean, I wasn't there in your class, but we did similar things and sent messages and stuff like that, and send videos. There was like that network, and we could just like hide videos on there. And remember those Bud Light commercials where it was like, "What's up?" And there was like the animal version and everything, and we just sent that back and forth. That was like the first time I encountered memes on the internet. Well, it wasn't actually internet, but it was like network. But yeah, those were good times. I remember that.
Yeah, and probably actual memes rather than the way people tend to misuse that word today by meaning any picture they slapped stuff on and sent on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. No,
it actually has to be something that actually spreads among the people. Otherwise, it's not a meme. I see people that are like, they take some picture of some stupid-looking cartoon character and write across it. Go, hey, look, I made a meme. No, you didn't.
Sometimes they get really weird. Like there's this whole category called dank memes, and I'm convinced that there's a lot of intuitive perceivers who find that stuff really funny. Like it's just like stuff that the point of it is to be abnormal, and that's the whole point. And there's no other humor to it. And it's like
someone in the ESFP group, not an ESFP, I'm sure, but someone who was in that group on Facebook actually got angry with me for saying that the dog memes weren't funny, because I'm like, it's just a dog with like broken English around it. Why is that funny?
I think some of those are funny.
It was not just like, oh, maybe it's not your thing. It was like he was actually angry that somehow I don't like get the internet or something because I didn't think this was funny. I'm like, listen to me, son. I was interneting when you were just a thought in your parents' mind, okay?
Exactly.
Like, the internet did not start with 4chan and Reddit and all that. Like, it existed before then.
Yeah, totally.
I'm from the old school, all right? We didn't need to take pictures of dogs and slap text on them to have a good time. We could create our own dogs, all right, and in text and with like ASCII characters and stuff. I mean, anyway.
Good old days.
You kids get off my lawn.
Totally.
How
Oh
could
yeah.
someone convince you to do something you're morally against?
Oh
How
wait,
would
wait, wait.
you describe your
I didn't get to
moral
answer the
code?
school question.
Well, then do it.
All right. Yeah, yeah. You just keep going on, and I can't stop you, man. I'm like
Well, I'm
so
trying not to
like
waste time. We're already up to 35 minutes. So,
tired. Yeah. Okay, I'll answer real quick. I just have a couple stories about that. I remember I was in algebra one, and I heard about like the fact that in European schools, like they basically don't require you to be present except for the test, and if you pass the test, then you've like gotten the grade. And I was like, I just blurted that out loud in class because I was so bored. I would just like basically daydream about rocking out on stage or something like that, and I would just be so over the math class. And I blurted out like, why can't we just be like European schools? And the teacher was like, what? And I was like, nothing. And that's just like that was my whole attitude. Like I could do the math, but I would like fall asleep in class and stuff. Then like later on, I had this realization like, why can't we just have like trade schools where you can learn a trade and then like you don't have to learn all this like ancillary stuff about things you'll probably never use. I
like
still
for instance, the word ancillary.
yeah, good one. No, I do like learning about like different stuff, but it has to be something that I'm self-motivated to get into. It's not just going to be something that you're forcing me to learn because then that burns me out and I never want to learn it again.
Yeah, I said a long time ago that kids usually do want to learn. Like, this is
Yeah,
not something where you don't have to force kids to learn. Kids want to learn. It's just a
yeah,
matter of what they learn. And when you constantly say, no, stop doing this thing you're interested in and pay attention to this boring thing.
yeah,
And then you
exactly.
go, I don't understand why the kids aren't responding when we tell them to stop doing what they enjoy doing and start paying attention to the boring thing.
Yeah,
How can we best uh, beat these kids into submission in a way
exactly.
that they will conform to wanting to learn about the boring thing?
Yeah,
Even if you did it in a way where you were like, this is practical knowledge, then you at least would have, even if it was boring, at least you
hmm
could convince someone, well, this is boring knowledge that's still useful in some way. So like the only math class that I actually got that out of was that we had a class that was called Math of Consumer Economics.
hmm
And there were actually moments in that class where I even had a little bit of fun.
yeah,
And it was partly because it was like, we're not just going to give you a bunch of numbers and symbols and say, do this long thing and trust us, you're going to need it somehow. It was,
yeah,
here's how this is actually used in real life. Like
hmm
when you purchase things or budget for something, or you want to buy like a cool car, here's how this is possible with numbers and thing. So at
yeah,
least they tried to like make it relevant enough that you could see, okay, I could see how this is something that would be useful to learn, as opposed to
yeah.
just memorize the following 90,000 symbols and then
Oh,
regurgitate it on command.
oh,
you know
I'm done. I'm done at that point. Yeah. That my On the other hand, if you make it fun, like my favorite teacher was my sophomore English teacher, and he did crazy stuff like you put in hick teeth and talk with an accent, or he like shoved a pencil up his nose, or like throw a ball like little tiny basketball in the hoop as he came into class, and he was like a real fun teacher. But
Yeah, I
um,
had a summer school teacher that was like that taught algebra. So he would take us outside and do the lesson on the sidewalk with the chalk. So again, yeah, if it's going to be a boring subject, at least come up with some way to make it a little bit more fun.
yeah, all right,
And a lot of subjects you can do that with without too much difficulty. When you get to
yeah,
something like history, like there's a lot of ways you can make history fun for kids. Like
oh
it
yeah,
does not
totally.
have to be just boring memorization of dates and things like that.
hmm
There's a lot of things that you can do in ways where kids will actually say, "Hey, this is kind of fun to learn about." To
Yeah,
play,
totally.
to get to play characters and stuff. You can almost go into, you know, Kersey types or Myers-Briggs types or whatever, and think, well, how could this subject appeal to that kind of role that person likes to play, and you could find ways to incorporate that. I think when it goes back to, like I said, I did a video about, teaching type and both the pros and cons of that in terms of, if it led to just another way to categorize people that kind of divided people and didn't, or encouraged sort of prejudices against certain types or things like that, then it wouldn't be a good thing. But so it all depends on whose hands it's in anyway. So if you think you sufficiently answered the education question, can we move on? Or
yeah, I think we could do a whole broadcast on that. That would be fun.
Yeah,
to do.
I'm sure we
There's a lot
could.
of
So
things I could say about that. So
we can revisit this at another time. But I do think the question about like moral code and stuff is pretty interesting, and another one we could do a whole video on. But basically, this is where I might sound incredibly shallow, but I'm okay with that. Like I said, I've become self-aware enough I can say this. If she's hot enough, she can probably convince me to do almost anything. I mean, there is a line, but it's hard to say like where that is.
Yeah.
Like there are things that, there are things that just don't appeal to me, period. Like I said earlier, I don't do drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. Like I have no interest in doing those things. It goes beyond just, I don't like the taste of something, or it's more of just sort of a fundamental concept of, I don't want, like, actually, I think Ted Nugent, said it pretty similarly. I forgot his exact words, but he was basically like, there's so much to get high on in the experience of life. Just he's talking about from the music standpoint that, he would hang out with all these rock people who were always like, playing this amazing music. And then they were like, okay, and now snort my Coke and smoke my dope. And he's like, well, why would I do that? Like, he's like, are you not just riveted to the music and making these awesome sounds and doing it, he didn't understand how people could be like doing all this amazing stuff and then being like, oh yeah, now let's do this thing that limits our ability and makes us forget we were even here or what we did, so I kind of look at it the same way. So that's something where, there are certain fundamental things where I don't even, it's weird for me to even call it morals, because it's almost not that. It's just sort of a fundamental thing in my being. It's not even like, I almost look at moral code. Again, that sounds like it's almost sort of a J thing, almost, where it's like, oh, a code. So here's the following line. It's not like that. It's just sort of like the instinct is do the thing, freaking Beavis and Butthead said, they're like, I like stuff that's cool. I don't like stuff that sucks. I mean, that's my moral code in a lot of ways. It's like, I know just sort of instinctively, this is something good, or this is going to bring about something good. I mean, do I make mistakes? Of course. Like, I'm not going to say that somehow I'm some sort of omnipotent being who knows, like, oh, I weigh this at 1/7 of the spirit, therefore I cannot, I don't know. It's not like that. It's just like, it feels wrong to me to do something, so I don't do it, is basically the gist of that. But now there are things, though, that I personally would not necessarily seek out. Like, we've talked about this in the concept of like artisans and like the way we see like rules and laws. There's an instinct of like to break the rules, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't be law-abiding citizens. We're not like going out like, waking up every day and go, what laws can I break today? And,
what windows can I break in today?
Yeah. It's like, and that's, again, at a time like this seems to be, a hot topic again, because people want to always polarize things and be like, those people that went to the beach when they were ordering people to stay at home, they're all a bunch of heartless people who want everyone to die, and it's like, no, they were some people who thought they wanted to have some fun and were not going to like shut down their lives because there were some people that were getting sick, and so that's kind of the thing there, where there are people that sort of can be shamed into behavior. I would say that SPs in general are the toughest to do that with, because one of two things is going to happen. Either we're going to dig in deeper to that thing, this is what I am going to do regardless, because this is my belief, or we're going to rebel against it just because you're insisting on it. Like the more you say this must be done, the less, we're going to like, I wasn't planning to break that rule, but because you're so insistent, now I will,
Yeah, exactly.
It's that kind of thing, it's when people want to so beat it into someone's head that it's like you almost sort of force the opposite, a backlash against trying to conform everybody to the same standards. So yeah, I would say my principles, whatever you want to call them, it's a pretty short list of things that I'm like, oh, I have to stick to these things. The rest is very instinctual. So could my instincts change, or could someone convince me that that I've been seeing things all wrong all my life and I'm really supposed to follow someone? Yeah, but it would be difficult because I'm also naturally skeptical and cynical, So in people that come along with their snake oil and are like, join the way of the flower and your life will take off, and I'm going to be like, okay, buddy, sure.
Yeah, right. By the way, I'll probably end with this answer because I have to wrap it up here. But I
No
want
problem.
to answer this question. So basically, my morals are don't kill, don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat, and that kind of thing. Just the basic sort of rule of law. Some have termed this like the non-aggression principle, and I've been a libertarian for a while. But even that, so even with that, even though like to me that works out 99.999% cases, people always bring up these scenarios where it's like if you're about to die in a blizzard in the middle of the woods in the middle of the night, and there's a cabin that someone doesn't have to be in, but it's owned by someone else, but they're not there. Can you legitimately break in the window and spend the night so you don't die? And it's like, well, of course. And like I thought of one where it's like, if say somehow you're in the middle of nowhere, maybe someone dropped you off at a park somewhere, and then like you see someone forcibly kidnapping some kids and driving off, and you don't have a car, but you see a car there, you can hotwire it and chase them down. It's the only way you can actually save the kids. Would you do it? And you can recompense the car owner later or whatever. It's like, yeah, I totally would. I would break even the most basic moral code if there's some higher value there, But I do, like you said, it's something intrinsic to me where I don't want to violate the integrity of my own being. And it's not because it's like you said, it's kind of tricky to call it moral because it's like, well, it's not like a code per se. It's just I don't want to violate myself by doing something that's just totally against my nature, that kind of thing. So I totally agree with you on that. But there's a couple questions I didn't get to answer. I feel like maybe we should do a part 2, but I have to go in to do a massage. But this has been pretty fun.
Far be it from me to keep you from getting a massage or doing a massage.
Sensory experience. Like, how could you be?
Well, all right. Well,
Cool.
I guess I can get with that. There was really only one more question, but I guess we'll make the answer to that one like super in depth in the next video. So
yeah,
thank you.
I had one that was like our ESTPs, adrenaline junkies, and I kind of wanted to go into that a little bit.
Okay, well, we can cover that too then, I guess. So
yeah,
when you're next available. In the meantime, thank you to our thousands of viewers for tuning in for this amazing experience. And join us next time for more fascinating, in-depth answers to important questions that plague society or something like that. Anyway, see you.
All right, cool. Check you later.
Bye.
All right, I'm gonna leave.